Changing Lanes, the official podcast of BMW. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Changing Lanes, the official podcast of BMW. My name is Jonathan.
And my name is Sarah.
And today on the podcast, we've got something special for the listeners who like the roar of a BMW engine.
And the listeners who enjoy a little bit of history.
You know, we should have like some sort of sound effect where we mix classical music with revving engines and then throw in like a weird time travel whoosh in there on top. I think that's going to fit the elements of this podcast really well.
That sounds good. Yeah.
All right. So from aircraft engines to motorcycle boxer engines, from the diesel car to the PHEV, we are going to present you our list of the best engines of BMW.
BMW has 100 plus years of history, and they've designed and built countless great engines. So why not show off a little and take a look under the hood at our engine milestones through the years?
Exactly. So BMW carries an important letter in its name. The M, right in the middle of BMW, that stands for Motoren in German, or in English, it is engines, right? And if you're interested, you can check out our podcast number 10, where we talk all about the origin of the BMW name, all about that stuff. But let's get back to today's episode about engines. Now, through various means of transport, whether it's a plane or a motorcycle or an automobile or even a boat, BMW pioneers new technologies. That's a fact. So we've chosen not one legendary BMW engine for you, but 12.
Yeah, and I mean, even 12, that was a hard list to create. 12 engine milestones from aircraft to electric propulsion. Even the editorial team actually had a heated debate and 6 different views in a team of 5, and lists were agreed upon and then thrown out. But now we really have the list.
Let's see if we can make it through this list without upsetting too many BMW engine fans and historians. I mean, ultimately, every gearhead has a different focus, so we've catered it to you guys. This list is the perfect debate starter. And no, this is not a definitive list, so please don't be angry if you think the M88 should be on the list or something else is missing, right?
Yeah, we're going to all agree to play nice, right?
Exactly. So with that out of the way, we're going to be good to one another with our 12 engines on this list. And let's start with the first engine that made the cut. And these are also not in ranking order. They're just chronological, okay? So these 12 engines are all great in their own right. Here we go. With that said, our oldest and our first engine of epic proportions is the BMW Ila aircraft engine from 1917.
Yeah, so the line sheer driving pleasure is, of course, what BMW is all about, whether it's on 2 wheels or 4. But way back, they could have used sheer flying pleasure because shortly after BMW was founded, engineers developed the company's first engine in 1917, and that was the BMW Ila aircraft engine. Yep, that's right. BMW originally created aircraft engines.
Yes. And, we even went into detail about this in a previous podcast episode, the exact same one that we mentioned earlier, podcast number 10. So make sure to check it out and become a BMW history expert. All right. Back to you, Sarah. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, so as I was saying, this engine has a sophisticated technical design which helped prevent loss of performance at great heights, resulting in an unofficial altitude record of 32,021 feet, which is 9,760 meters, and that was back in 1919. Well, that paved the way for BMW to take up a leading position right from the start. I mean, this was right at the beginning of BMW, so it really was a big deal.
I mean, this is huge. I mean, the success of something like this, I don't know, it's like comparable to Facebook being a huge hit after being created in Mark Zuckerberg's Harvard dorm, right?
Okay, well, I guess you can compare it to that. All right.
So here are some facts and figures for the gearheads out there listening. The ELA engine featured a water-cooled six-cylinder gasoline inline engine with carburetor producing 185 HP.
So the inline six was a part of BMW right from the beginning. That's good to know.
Yep. But with a whopping displacement of 1,163 cubic inches or 19.1 liters, I mean, imagine that in a normal car.
Yeah, I mean, there are cars like the Beast of Turin from Fiat, but maybe that's something for another episode. Okay, moving on to the second engine that we think is great. Number 2, the Boxer engine in the BMW R5 motorcycle from 1936.
All right, let's zip from aircraft to motorcycle engines. The legendary BMW R5. Now, this machine is powered by a 30 cubic inch 500cc Boxer engine with a pretty impressive power output. For that time, especially, of 24 HP. And, I gotta say it, one notably technical feature here is the valve control via 2 camshafts. Now, the R5 quickly earned a reputation for being reliable and robust.
Yeah, and by the way, gear shifting on the R5 was by foot, which at the time was actually a novelty. But that soon established itself as a standard that we all know and love. So if you've ever wondered why you shift with the left foot today and don't have a lever by the gas tank anymore, that's thanks to the R5.
There you go. The more you know. And next on our list is the inline-six engine in the BMW 328 from 1936.
So this is actually the first car engine on our list. Now we know that BMW engines are considered to be pretty sporty, right?
Yes, and this 2-liter inline-six is another excellent example of this. It was first used in the 326 back in 1936 and was then given a modern aluminum cylinder head. And it also delivered around 80 HP in the BMW 328 and was able to hit up to 5,000 RPM. Now, I know that might not sound like much for today's standards, but pretty good for back then.
It is, and you'll see later in the list, I'm just going to say 10 cylinders. Jonathan, you probably already know is coming.
Yeah. But back in 1936, where 5,000 RPM was pretty amazing. I mean, not bad. And, when you combine that engine with a weight of just over 1,800 pounds, which is roughly 800 kilograms, and the 328 was a real driving machine back then. So, not bad.
Okay, next on our list, number 4, the aluminum alloy V8 engine in the BMW 502 from 1954.
Now, if you do not know the BMW 502, please go to Google and take a look at this beauty. Now, if I tell you it had the nickname the Baroque Angel, you'll know why. Curved body, sweeping lines, it's got it all.
But there's nothing Baroque old school about its BMW V8 engine. In fact, it was the world's first mass-produced V8 aluminum alloy engine and was very high-tech at the time, as were the brake booster, the power clutch, and the disc brakes, the last of which would later be fitted as standard. Even the police and fire department were impressed by this car's qualities, and they used the BMW 502 as an emergency vehicle.
I mean, imagine calling the cops and they show up in like a luxury car.
Well, welcome to 1950s Germany, I guess.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, I don't want to be a bank robber or anything if the police come to the chase with a 502 and it's 100 horses V8. I mean, that is not a fair fight.
No. Okay, let's jump a couple of decades to the 1970s when turbos were still something special and exotic.
I mean, it's hard to imagine a world without turbo engines today where it's hard to find new models that don't come with the turbo. I mean, it's something we all know. But back then in the 70s, something different.
Yeah, totally. That changed, though, with the next entry in our list, at least in some parts of the world.
Exactly. Introducing next on our list, the 4-cylinder turbo engine and the BMW 2002 Turbo in 1973.
So 50 years ago, turbos in production cars were as rare as a 4-speed manual transmission today. In came the 2002 Turbo with its 2-liter turbo engine. It was the first mass-produced European car with a turbocharger, even before some competitors that we won't name, but you know who you are.
I mean, everybody knows the 2002 Turbo for its iconic looks with the turbo spelled out backwards on the front bumper, but the real magic was happening under the hood. It produced 170 HP and made the car good for a top speed of 211 kilometers per hour, pushing it into real sports car territory.
Yeah, legend has it that plenty of sports cars owners had to get used to the look of 2002 turbos in their mirrors, chasing them out of the left lane on the Autobahn.
But the early turbo engines, they were not what you know from today's turbo engines. I mean, geez, those old phrases don't come from nothing, like the phrase turbo on, gas gone, or the turbo commemorative second. You know, for the delay there used to be before the power from the turbocharger when it would kick in. And, you know, even though the 2002 Turbo was only built for 2 years, it totally laid the groundwork for the turbo engine as we know it today. Pretty groundbreaking. And, you know, the remaining models, just 1,672 of them, they were built in total, and those are now some of the most popular BMW classics.
All right. Next on our list, we go back to naturally aspirated, but even more powerful, the 4-valve 6-cylinder engine from the BMW 3.0 CSL Racing Coupe from 1974.
Yes, awesome. But for us to go back in time, we sometimes have to do Back to the Future. Just follow along with me. Let's talk about production car history for a second. So at the end of the 1980s, and I know Sarah said from 1974, but at the end of the 1980s, the multi-valve became popular. So 4-valve technology from racing was used more and more in mass production, right? Taking what they've learned from the racetrack, like in 1974, and putting it into the consumer market, resulting in more power in the end of the 80s. And one of the cars that laid the groundwork for this was the inline 6 in the CSL Racing Coupe in the 70s.
Right. So while the production version was a 2-valve that produced up to 206 HP, the racing version could reach 440 HP, so more than double. And this was due to the 4-valve cylinder head and a greater engine of 3.5 liters.
Awesome. So meaning that the name 3.0 CSL should have actually been 3.5 CSL, but let's not get too nitpicky. Today, multi-valves are standard in engine design, good for both performance and the environment, right? So a good example of the technology transfer from track to the street. Okay, everybody, podcast listeners, we now are halfway through our list of 12, and I'm feeling revved up for the next 6. What about you, Sarah?
Definitely. So, Jonathan, what's next?
All right, so whoever said good things come in small packages, that person wasn't wrong when talking about this mighty engine. We've got tiny but tough 4-cylinder turbo in the BMW Formula One racing car of 1983.
Yeah, we've gone from large volume power units to small souped up engines with this one. And it's a pretty good statement about what turbos can do. Let's compare. We just talked about the 3.5-liter engine in the CSL race car producing 440 horses. The F1 engine, 4 cylinders, and a mere 1.5 liters displacement. But the power output, there are rumors that the power in versions used in training sessions reached up to 1,200 HP.
I mean, that seems crazy even for today, right? Oh.
Yes, yeah. And with a lot of these numbers, you always need to put it into perspective. Like 50 HP was a lot back in the days, which of course is true, but it's been almost 30 years and 1,200 HP is still an insane number.
Totally. And, you know, just like with the CSL, we have another example of the technology transfer from motorsports to mass production cars. I mean, not in terms of power output, but in downsizing. The BMW Formula One engine can undoubtedly be seen as a forerunner of today's downsizing method.
And in case you didn't know what downsizing means, It means reducing engine displacement and the number of cylinders without losing performance and at the same time reducing consumption.
Awesome.
All right, moving on to number 8 on our list. The 6-cylinder diesel engine in the BMW 524 TD from 1983, the second generation of the 5 Series.
All right, and after all of these really sporty engines that we've been talking about in our list, you're probably wondering why this one made the cut.
Well, the time had come for BMW to go diesel. After about 60 years of engine building, BMW built its first mass-produced diesel engine. And it did so with impressive performance data. So check these facts and figures out. 115 HP and 210 Nm of torque.
Again, outstanding for a diesel at that time. And, it's probably a little hard to grasp for the younger listeners out there, but it's just as with the turbos. Today, completely normal in your regular car, but way back when, it was something special.
Yeah, diesel engines were once only used in trucks and tractors, and engines like the 2.5-liter engine in the BMW 524 TD helped pave the way for the diesel. All right, Jonathan, what's next on our list of the greatest BMW engines?
All right, we're going to stick with the 80s, but we're going to go big, just like the hair. The 12-cylinder engine in the BMW 750i.
Well, this is pretty much a no-brainer on this list. Jonathan, why don't you explain?
Of course. So the BMW 750i was the first German production engine to feature a dozen cylinders since World War II. This is huge. The V12 engine helped the 7 Series achieve outstanding driving performance with great comfort and, without compromising on understatement. Even though, 5 liters and 300 HP are not normally numbers screaming understatement, right?
Yeah, one of my favorite stories about the engine, there was this demonstration of the incredible smooth running of the V12 in an experiment. And a coin was placed on the edge of the engine, not flat down, but sort of standing up on its edge. And the coin did not fall over even when the engine was running.
So good. I've always wanted to try this ever since I first heard of it. So I might need to drop by BMW Group Classic to see that for myself. So how can we continue with the last 3 engines after this big, monstrous one?
Well, of course, we go slightly smaller, but really just slightly. We go to the V10 with a 10-cylinder engine in the 2004 BMW M5, as well as the M6.
So 2 cylinders down, but definitely no downgrade.
Oh, no downgrade. So 500 HP at 7,750 revs. If it sounds like a race car, well, that's because it pretty much is. It's just transplanted and wrapped up in the body of 5 or 6 Series. The S85, as it's also called, was actually inspired by Formula One, which also used 10-cylinder engines at the time.
Now, this is the only 10-cylinder in BMW history. Of course, to date, you never know. BMW is very innovative. And what an engine it is. 507 horses from 5 liters are impressive, but we can't skip talking about the sound of this thing. Oof. Do yourself a favor and hop on over to YouTube after this episode and search for some sound videos. You will not regret it. All right, for our penultimate engine, we're going silent. The electric engine in the BMW i3 debuting in 2013.
Yeah, Jonathan, we've made some pretty good time hopping over the decades, haven't we?
Most definitely. And now we're breaking into e-mobility as well. Not bad.
Yep. With the i3, BMW became something of a pioneer in electric vehicles. Well, the first time I got to drive a BMW i3, I was pretty surprised. I was really, I had a lot of doubts about electric cars. It was so quiet. I was often wondering whether the car was even running. But ultimately, it was so much fun. The acceleration, especially at traffic lights, it's really just something else. It's a pleasure to drive.
And with 170 HP, the pleasure of driving these electric vehicles is just put the pedal down and you just go whoosh and silently. It's just so much fun to drive. And, taking off at a traffic light, you can leave your combustion cars in the dust as well. It's kind of cool. And it's kind of cool to see what's in store in terms of electric engines in the future as well. And last but not least on our list of the 12 greatest BMW engines is Sarah. Why don't you take this one?
I'll be happy to do so, Jonathan. Okay, so number 12 on our list is the 3-cylinder hybrid in the BMW i8. So a hybrid meaning that the i8 is powered by both an electric and a gasoline engine. Now, Jonathan, when it comes to the i8, I feel that lots of people just reduce it to its design, the cool doors and everything, but it's actually pretty awesome in the engineering department as well. The system performance, meaning electric and combustion engine combined, is 362 HP. Can you believe that? That's good for a 0 to 60 time of less than 5 seconds. And it's a real winner as well. Maybe not on the track like the CSL or the F1 engine, but in 2019, the BMW i8 PHEV won the prestigious Engine of the Year award for the 5th time in a row. Not too shabby, is it?
Not bad at all. So, my friends, this wraps up our list of 12 of the greatest BMW engines ever built, from aircraft engines to motorbikes to racing engines and innovations like turbo, diesel, and electric. I think we proved that the history of the BMW engine is rich in outstanding models, but that doesn't mean that this list is set in stone. Our podcast listeners surely will not agree on all of our choices, but I'm sure that they'll appreciate the thought that we put into it, right, Sarah?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I know we could have extended this list to twice its size and still not everybody would be happy. But, what about the V8 in the E92 M3? Or what about the S14? And the list goes on and on. But maybe we'll just need to do a second edition one of these days. We'll see.
Yeah, Jonathan, and who knows what that list will feature. We could put hydrogen technology on it, or even more advanced combustion engines or electric. Just one thing, though, is clear. Innovation never stops, and the options are plentiful, so there'll be exciting times for everybody interested in technology up ahead.
And that's something we all can agree on. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this week's episode of Changing Lanes.
And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to our podcast for future episodes.
And to dive deeper into all things BMW, head on over to bmw.com to learn more.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jonathan.
And this has been Changing Lanes.
See you next time.